Hello there, dear friends, and welcome once again to the Relaxed Fantasy Review. Today, we're continuing our series in the Humblewood campaign setting, one of the oldest third-party settings for D&D 5th edition. We're talking about the races that we find in this animal-based campaign, and we're talking about another birdfolk. In the Humblewood books, the birdfolk are very much like the humans. They are the dominant race of the world. They, control the cities. They have the most common language, and they are the most influential. But instead of being just one race, there's actually 5 of them. Today we're talking about the Raptor. Raptors resemble things like hawks or falcons. They're speedy birds that utilize their abilities in quite an interesting way. We'll get into the mechanics in just a moment, but before we do, I'd like to let you know, Relaxed Fantasy Review has memberships. For just $1 a month, you can support me here on YouTube and get a couple benefits. First, you get a little badge next to your name in the comments, letting folks know that you're a supporter, but also you get early access to my videos. I upload videos Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and I upload them a day early for members only. If that interests you, you can click the join button just below the video down there. I'd love to see you in the comments. And if it doesn't interest you, that's totally fine. Just liking, subscribing, and watching my videos is very, very much enough support, and I'm very, very pleased that you're here. So thank you for watching my content. So Raptors. The first time I ever played a Humblewood campaign, many moons ago before I even started DMing, I played a Raptor. I was a Raptor rogue, and it was a really, really fun character. Because this is an older third-party module, there are standard ability score increases that come with the races, and we begin with a +2 to your dexterity. Debatably the best stat in all of D&D, and a +2 in it nets a 10 out of 10 for the Raptors. Their size is small, so they're not, regular bird size. They are small-sized creatures, roughly 3 feet tall. And a small creature has a lot of benefits over medium-sized creatures, but a lot of disadvantages over them. And this means that in my mind, they just slip in below a medium size, and I would call them a 9 out of 10. And they have a 25-foot walking speed, which is standard for the original small races of D&D, like halflings and gnomes. So it is unfortunate that some of the other small races in the books since have got an upgrade to a standard 30-foot speed, but here we are, 25 feet, and that is an 8 out of 10. As with most birdfolk, or all birdfolk in Humblewood, they do not have the ability to fly, per se. Instead, what they have is a glide ability. When they fall, they can use their reaction to open their wings and not take any fall damage, descend at a speed of 60 feet per round, and if they move at least 10 feet down while they're gliding, they can move their movement speed horizontally. This gives you quite a bit of maneuverability in the air, as well as just no fear of heights anymore. Overall, it's not as good as flying, but it's still an amazing trait to have racially, and I say that it is a 10 out of 10 power. And Raptors also have very strong talons. They get an unarmed strike of 1d4, a little bit better than the standard unarmed strikes. And if they make a climbing check on a surface which could reasonably use their talons to dig in, they get advantage on the check. Animal unarmed strikes or beast creatures unarmed strikes have improved since the old days. Most of them do d6s instead of d4s. And advantage on climbing checks is often just replaced with a climbing speed, so this is a little bit of an outdated feature, but nevertheless, I still think it's decent. It's better than nothing, and I say it's worth 7 out of 10. And one of the best things you can give a race is a skill proficiency that they're going to use constantly, and Raptors have keen senses, which gives them proficiency in perception, the most used skill in D&D, and proficiency in perception is a 10 out of 10 power. Try arguing with me otherwise. They also have a woodland hunter feature. This allows them to ignore 1/2 and 3/4 cover, very similar to the sharpshooter feat, although it's just the single bullet point from that feat. And this is either going to be awesome or it's not going to come up. It really depends on your dungeon master. I personally, as a dungeon master, forget about cover a lot. Depends on the situation, obviously. But mechanically, it is very sound. It ignores that +2 and +5 AC boost that creatures that aren't in total cover can get. And overall, I'd say that it actually is a pretty good feature, assuming that cover is used properly. And I give it 8 out of 10. It's not bad at all. Building on this, there's also the Hunter's Training feature that Raptors get, which gives them 3 weapon proficiencies with the spear, the shortbow, and the longbow. And it actually has a little caveat that even though you're a small creature, you can use the longbow without disadvantage. One of the downsides of being a small creature is that heavy weapons, such as great swords and longbows, automatically have disadvantage when you use them, simply because they're too big and too wieldy for you to use, or too unwieldy. And for the longbow, the Raptors don't worry about that. Now, this is good, kind of. This is the sort of thing, like, if you want a longbow on a rogue, this is phenomenal. But most classes, like rangers and fighters that would want to use this, already have proficiency in all weapons. So this is, and if you're a spellcaster who doesn't get proficiency, like, you know, a druid or maybe a cleric that doesn't get longbows, fair enough, like, it's okay. I just don't see it coming up outside of niche cases. And short bows and spears are simple weapons anyway, which most people get. So I say 7 out of 10 for this. The longbow bit sells it for me just enough to put it there. And like I said earlier, birdfolk are the common and dominant race of the world, so there is no common language in Humblewood. There is birdfolk, which all creatures speak, or all sentient creatures speak, just like all creatures speak common and then usually a language of their choice. But birdfolk actually don't get this. Raptors just speak birdfolk, which is the equivalent of just speaking common. And most races are bilingual in D&D. Now, you can get languages elsewhere, but I think it's a shame that they only get the one instead of an extra of their choice. So, 7 out of 10. Not a whole lot to go with here. Finally, Raptors have 2 different varieties, 2 different sub-races. The first one is the Marin Raptor. Marin Raptors get a +1 to their intelligence. Intelligence is the most niche of the skills, only used for specific skills and specific spellcasters, and a +1 to it isn't going to do much unless you are one of those, so I say that's 5 out of 10. It's only useful very occasionally. Then you have a swimmer feature, where you gain a swimming speed equal to your walking speed. So you're a bird that can swim, which is actually really cool. The idea that you could, like, you know, glide out of the sky and then just kind of dive bomb into water. I love that. It's very thematic, and it's a very cool way to boost your maneuverability in watery areas. So I say 9 out of 10. And then finally, you get the patient feature, which is an interesting feature. I've never seen anything quite like this. When you use a readied action, you get advantage on the first d20 you roll. So effectively, readied actions lets you use your action on your turn, and then off your turn you can use your reaction to trigger the readied action. Usually it's an attack. For example, I ready my action in case an enemy moves closer to me or closer to my friend. I will attack them with my reaction. And with this feature, you get advantage on that, which is cool. Now, the one downside to this is that it would be awesome if you just got advantage on any reaction attack or reaction ability that you use, like a counterspell, for example. The problem is that a counterspell isn't a readied action. It's a reaction that isn't a readied action. And as a result, it doesn't gain advantage, similar with an opportunity attack. That wouldn't get advantage either. So this truly is for the strategist in the party, not the reactionary fighter or spellcaster. I still am going to give it high marks. I'm still going to say it's an 8 out of 10 ability, because it does lend itself to a roguish sort of I attack on my turn, or I can ready my attack and reaction attack off my turn to gain advantage. I like that, and it is a cool little play on how that would work. So 8 out of 10 for that. And the Marin Raptor overall is an 8 out of 10. The other one you get is the Mistral Raptor. They get a +1 to their Wisdom modifier. That is good. +1 to wisdom stat is decent. It's a little more versatile than intelligence skill wise, and it gives you a little more potential when it comes to spellcasting than intelligence would. I say that it is a 6 out of 10 as a +1 stat. You also gain a proficiency in the acrobatics skill. Not a bad skill to have. Acrobatics is useful in a lot of situations, and I say it's an 8 out of 10. And then finally, you have the aerial defense feature. Attacks that go against you while you are gliding, as well as if you are just falling or jumping, have disadvantage. This is not something I anticipate coming up much. Like, this is the sort of thing that will only really come up in 2 situations. One is if you're fighting other bird folks, or you're in the sky above non-bird folk creatures and they're shooting up at you, or if you're gliding down and other bird folk are trying to stab you while you glide. I can kind of see this, but it's very unlikely because you fall even while gliding at a rate of 60 feet per turn, so you're going to have to be falling quite a ways for this to matter. And then the other one would be is if you need to get away from somebody, obviously they can opportunity attack you, and if you don't want to take the disengage action, you could jump, and while jumping, attacks against you have disadvantage, so that would give opportunity attacks against you disadvantage if you're very strategic about how you jump. I see potential here. I see that it's a very niche set of abilities that this kind of does, and it just gives disadvantage rather than automatically granting a disengage action, for example. But it's okay. It has its purposes. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. It's decent. And overall, the Mistral Reactor is also an 8, or Mistral Raptor is also an 8 out of 10. Very different reasoning here. You know, one of them, the Maron Reactor, or Maron Raptor, I keep saying reactor. The Maron Raptor, you know, can swim and can ready their action. So they're much more planning. They're much more, you know, kind of mental, strategic sense. Whereas the Mistral Raptor is much more dancey. You know, they fly better, they have acrobatics, and a little more perception and wisdom. And overall, I think Raptors are a very, very easy sell for an agile race. Monks, rogues, maybe even rangers could get a lot of use out of these guys. They make fantastic ranged combatants with their hunter and their training there. And overall, I think that they're just a good race. I think that they're not overpowered, they're not stupid strong, they just lend themselves to a specific playstyle that is a good playstyle in D&D. And because they don't just automatically have broken features, you can take one of these bird folk and take them right out of Humblewood and put them in your D&D campaign. Or just play the Humblewood campaign yourself. It is a great one, and I think that this is a fantastic little race. This has been the Relaxed Fantasy Review. If you enjoyed the video, please like and subscribe down below. Have a look for the join button down there, as well as a link to the Humblewood book. It's written by the Deck of Many, and I think it is a great module. It's very popular, and I highly suggest you check it out for yourself. Have a good one, my friends.